Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make this double accordion gatefold card. It's got the gatefold, but there's this lovely little accordion extra fold on the inside, little space to write, and made with the absolutely gorgeous Peaceful Garden suite. So I'm going to pop this off to one side, and quite often it's here's the base of the card, but I'm going to start from scratch with you today because there's quite a bit of cutting. So bringing in the paper cutter, we are going to take a piece of regular cardstock, 8.5 by 11, and we are going to cut it on the 8.5 inch side at 5.5. So we are going to cut that. So we have a 3-inch piece left, which we're going to deal with in just a moment. So now we have a piece that is 5.5 by 11, and we are going to cut that down to 9.5. So line it up with 9.5 on the arm and cut that piece off. That piece we don't need anymore. And then we are going to score it at 1/2 inch and 2 5/8 inch on each side. So I'm just doing my 1/2 inch scoring using the measurements to the right because there's a lot more support for the paper on a Stampin' Up! Paper trimmer. So now that we've got the 1/2 inch done, I'm going to move it to 2 5/8 and score it, and then turn it round. We've already got the 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to move it to 2 5/8 and score it. And then what we need to do on the little 1/2 inch flaps at the end, we need to cut down by 1 1/4 inches. Well, we need to cut down 1 1/4 inches, and we also need to cut up 1 1/4 inches. So I'm going to stand up, which puts me a little bit closer to my camera. Oops, let's make sure that the cutting blade just seems to have popped out of its trough. So line the edge up at 1 1/4, and we're going to cut from the score upward, and then at the bottom we're going to put it in at the score line and go downward, and then we'll just turn it over and do the same. So we'll line it up at 1 1/4, and we'll go from the bottom, from the score line, down and off the bottom, and up here we'll go in at the score line and up and off at the top. So that's the cutting with that part for now. And then what we're going to do is we are going to cut away the piece up to that 1 1/4 cut line. So we're just removing a little 1 1/4 by 1/2 inch piece down the score line. So 4 little pieces to cut out. And then sometimes to make it easier, I'm just going to give a little notch inward on those pieces. It means they don't risk sticking out of the accordion section. Oops. So there you have it. 4 little scraplets. And then what we're going to do is we are going to fold on those score lines and then fold them in like a gatefold card. So I'm not going to press the edges because we have to make sure that they meet nicely in the middle before we commit to a bone fold. So they are nice and even, and then we can score the edges. So that is the main body of the card with its gatefold. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the 3-inch piece that we had left when we cut it down to 5.5, and we're going to cut this at 10 5/8. Let me just make sure I've got that right before I cut it. So 10 5/8. So we'll go all the way out to 10 5/8, and just cut that little slither off. And again, we don't need that piece. And what we are going to do is we are going to score these at 2 1/8. So line it up at 2 1/8 and 4 1/4 at each side. So I'll turn it over. We're going to do 2 1/8 and 4 1/4, just measuring it up on the paper trimmer. And that is our little inside accordion section. So we'll fold it and fold it back on itself and fold it in and back on itself. So these are what will fit and make this little mechanism. So now these have ended up being 2 1/8 by 3. So we need some designer series paper and some basic white. So what I'm going to do is bring in the designer series paper, and this, because the card is 5 1/2 tall, I cut it at 5 3/8. And then I'm going to cut the pieces for the inside. Now the nice thing is to have a continuity of the inside, so you can see where the birds are flying over. There's not very many of them that you can actually see, but sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It really just depends where on the paper you've made the cuts. So because this is 2 1/8 by 5 1/2, I've already cut it down to be 5 3/8, so I'm now going to cut it at 2. So I'm going to cut it 2, and that will be for here. And then this is 4 1/4, so I'm going to cut it at 4 1/8. So I'm making it 1/8 of an inch smaller each time, but cutting across so there's a flow. And then the last piece, which is here, needs to be 2 inches. And then we need to also do the 2 pieces for the front. Now, I felt it was more important to have the inside, believe it or not, looking continuous than the front. So this is now 4 just. So I'm going to cut it. It's literally a hair's breadth under 2 is what it needs to be in order to be equal, because this is just a hair's breadth under 4. I don't know if you can see that on the paper trimmer. So just gonna, it's not even really a measurement, it's 2, and then you just move it backwards, because that was the fairest way I could think of to share it out. Because we've used 4 1/8 for the bigger piece in the middle, we've sort of stolen 1/8 of an inch from what was left. So, you know, you're talking a 16th. We're not going to worry about a 16th. Man on a galloping horse, as one of my phrases go, is not going to notice that. But while we have all these pieces cut and they're all matched up, I'm actually going to go ahead and attach them where they go before I build the accordion section. So like I say, we know these all got cut and they all matched because we did them one after the other. And so we don't misplace what goes where. Let's just put them on. They're going on anyway, aren't they? So and I am absolutely loving this suite, this peaceful garden. And now we can put the 2 outside pieces on. So again, just make sure they are the right ones. We can see that bird is matching up. But the front is quite busy, so it's not so noticeable if it's a smidge less. But if you're going to make the effort, what's it your grandma always used to say, if the job's worth doing, it's worth doing well. So there we have it. So that's all the designer series paper on those pieces. Now to build the lovely middle piece. So we know these are all 2 1/8 by 3 tall. And then what I did was I went ahead and I cut some designer series paper, and these, and one piece of basic white for the signing panel, and these are 2 7/8 by 2. So it was one long strip, and then this is just the other side, and I flipped it over. So there's no particular rhyme or reason as to what goes where on these ones. It was really just a personal choice. So we'll pop that on there. I was actually going to have the doves on the front, but then when I realized I was going to be attaching a dove, it seemed like a little bit of a competition. And the other side of the designer series paper is so pretty as well and keeps with the theme. I thought, why not just flip them over? So we'll pop all of those on. Make sure I'm putting, that's the wee snag if you are using 2 sides of the same, because you have to make sure you're actually putting the adhesive on the correct side. I have been known to put it on the side that was supposed to be sticking out and got awfully mad at myself. So now that is the base done, and what we need to do is we need to measure halfway along this little section. So we know it's 2 1/8, so we need to measure this at 1 1/16. So the best way to do that is to find the edge, and I was just doing it on, I was personally just doing it on my grid paper. So put a little pencil mark. I mean, it's so minute, I don't even know if you can see that. I can see it because it's sort of shining for me, because it's the graphite. And then what I made was a little template. So in order to find the middle of this and make sure this little accordion part matches up, this was just a piece of computer paper, and it doesn't really matter how long the back is, but I made it 4 1/4 wide, which is the same width as the piece. And then we know these were cut at 1 1/4. So this little section is 1 1/4 by 4 1/4, and then however much was the piece left on my paper. And then I know that when I line up the little pencil mark I've just put on, everything's going to line up and be straight, and then these pieces are going to line up with the section that they attach to. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to just put adhesive on the middle panel, and then like I say, it's 4 1/4, so just tap it into place, and it's 1 1/4 deep, so it matches the top of the little notches that got cut out. And then that pencil mark that I put on, I am going to line this all up and stick it down, and then my lovely little cheetah sheet can go away. So now we know that these match there, and what we have to do now is attach them to the front. So now fold everything out of the way and fold one side in with the flap, and then we're going to put adhesive all the way down that flap, and then turn that part back. So then we're going to turn everything over to this side, close the gate and make the flap visible, and then go all the way down and open that piece. So now they're all attached. So you can do it inside, you can do, oh, that one's a bit lumpy. but this one, whoops, fits just right. And as that's the front, that's a good thing. So now we have everything squared away and level. Now we can put the greetings on. So what I have is the dies that came with the Peaceful Garden, and these are called Peace on Earth dies. And I pre-cut out, here's one I made earlier, a few little bits and pieces. So I cut a a dove with its wings up, let's call it that. I've got a dove with his wings out, and I die cut from the glimmer paper, the Peaceful Garden glimmer paper, a little olive branch, I guess. Isn't that what doves carry? And then I also cut out, using the stylish shapes, just from basic white, I cut a banner for the greeting. And then I thought, well, what greeting could I use? Unfortunately, the greetings in the Peace on Earth set were a little bit large to fit on this card. And then I had a good idea. Because I love my paper pumpkin, and I don't think paper pumpkin should ever be discounted. I mean, I'm always saying one of the nice things is that you get to keep it for, you know, forever. And one of the greetings in the paper pumpkin kit that just came out, the September 2025 one, there is a lovely greeting that says warmest wishes. So I'm going to bring in the Misty Moonlight ink, and I am going to ink up just part of it. It's just going to be wishes. So you can do that gently on the edge of the ink pad, and then stamp wishes. And of course you have to make sure it's really clean. And then I'm going to just do the same thing again and just ink up where it says warm and put that above. So now instead of a long skinny greeting, I've got a short square one. So I'm going to put the ink away out of the way, and then we'll get to building. So the warmest wishes is going to go on the front. Now, unfortunately, because this is quite chunky, you can't do the usual trick of adding dimensionals, or my usual trick of adding things with dimensionals. So I am just going to put some adhesive on and stick it on. And then I noticed that my little doves don't have eyes, and I would really like them to have eyes, and I wasn't sure what to use, so I got just a fine tip Sharpie, and I'm just going to give them the lightest dot of an eye because I feel that finishes it off. And then I'm going to just put adhesive on the back of this dove, so he's kind of just flying there. And then this little guy is just going to be up here. Now he can actually hang off because it doesn't matter because he's on the front of the card. And then what I need to do is bring in my silicone mat and find my little olive branch. Put minute little dots of glue on there, and then give it to him to carry, and just hold it in place for a little minute, and that's it. So there you have it. There's two the same basically. So this guy just is hanging out there. It's got the little signing panel, and then it's got the flying dove with his olive branch, and I think that is a really lovely card. So it does fit in a standard envelope. Like I say, it's chunky, but it's not too chunky that it won't fit in. If there had been dimensionals, it really would have just, I was going to say pushed the envelope. Very, very appropriate wording. It would have just been too much and you would have to pay extra postage. But there you have them. If you like what you've seen, please consider subscribing. I thank you very much for that. Ring the bell and you'll know when I've posted a video. If you've got a question, pop it in the box below and I will always get back to you. Let me know what you think. I always appreciate the comments. And in the meantime, thanks so much for watching.